Let's talk about the NFL. The Washington football team has had quite a wild last couple months. Maybe the craziest quarantine for any NFL team would be the Washington football team. Obviously, they finally make the decision to change their name after being protested for years and years and years. Then an entire article and expose comes out in Washington Post exposing their toxic culture that they've had in there for years and years and years. And it felt as if the people that they were hiring to kind of be the face of the new team, the Washington football team, named TBD later, that Ron Rivera was this kind of peacemaker, this man that was a coach that was sent from the heavens to the Washington football team and Snyder and the family and everything over there. Now we are learning, as of either last night or this morning, I believe he told the team last night, that Ron Rivera, the brand new head coach for the Washington football team, a man who is obviously spearheading a big movement and changing the way things are run over there in Washington, has been diagnosed with lymph node cancer. And in the announcement, they said this is a very treatable and very curable form of cancer. He said that he will break right into the rehab and the treatment for lymph node cancer, and he will be coaching while doing it, which I think everybody kind of raised their eyebrows out because we are currently in the middle of a pandemic, which I don't think we know much about here 5 months after it shut down the entire world. But we do know that people that are potentially going through, chemo, which could weaken your immune system a little bit, things like that. This COVID-19 obviously is a big, big ass whenever it comes to those types of situations. I believe it's called immunocompromised is the way it was being described. But Ron Rivera, I assume his doctors, the entire Washington football team have talked about how if he feels good enough to go in there and coach, to continue to coach no matter what the situation is. And he said that he's expecting and has been told 3 to 4 weeks into this that he could potentially become a bit too tired or something like that. And in that case, we don't know who the assistant coach will be, but we probably assume that somebody will step into that interim head coach role. Now, obviously, we can't wait to watch Ron Rivera kick the hell out of this. He's a tough man. He's a badass man. He's a good man. I assume he's got a great supporting cast around him. If all the things we've been told about good people obviously have a good cast around him, let's all expect that Ron Rivera is going to beat this, come back, and lead the Washington football team. But this is obviously quite a punch in the gut to a franchise that, could possibly, and I think any franchise, need Ron Rivera at this moment. So he's going to continue to coach. And we obviously, in the NFL, whenever this situation like this happens, you always look back to when previously this had happened. And myself and Darius actually but we're on the team for the most recent situation from this, which has spurned a foundation that has raised millions and millions of dollars for cancer research. But Chuck Pagano was the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Chuck Pagano was a brand new head coach. There was a brand new regime. There was an entire new system, everything like that. We had the opportunity, obviously, to go through OTAs and have team meetings with Chuck and position meetings and get a chance to learn about him quickly. And to be honest, our entire team fell in love with Chuck very, very quickly. Chuck was a guy that I think any player that you would ever talk to loved playing for Chuck. So we had this deep connection in the first couple of weeks. Obviously, we're a young team trying to get everything done, and we had a good experience. And we had a bye week, like week 5, like maybe week 4, very early bye week, which whenever you see the schedule made and you hear and read that you have a week 5 bye week, you are miserable. This is not a good time to have a bye week. This is the league and schedule maker saying, you stunk last year. You are going to get punished for it now, where you're going to have to go very quick early, and then you've got the long haul closing out. I mean, when you're in the middle of that tunnel on the other side of the bye week, there is no light in sight. Good luck, grind it out. That is something that people look at when the schedule is released. But for us, it just so happened to probably save Chuck's life. Chuck, going into that bye week, the story, I believe he said this publicly, he saw bruises on himself for the last couple weeks going into that bye week, just like bruises would pop up. And he was like, oh, well, I guess I'm getting old or something. Like he thought that. So I believe his wife made him go in and get checked in the bye week. And as soon as he went in there, they were like, you're not leaving. You got leukemia, you got this, and then rumors started spreading, but we're on our bye week, right? So players kind of heard about it, but not really. And then whenever we got back to the team, and I believe we traded for you that week, or we picked you up that week, right?
Signed me that week.
We picked you up that week. So this was like Darius's introduction to the team. The first team meeting, let's say it was supposed to be at 7:30 on Monday or something like that after the bye week. We go in. We sit there. The equipment managers were told to go into the team meeting, not normal. The athletic trainers were told to go into the team meeting, not normal. And the team meeting was supposed to start at a certain time. It was like 5 minutes past that, and it wasn't even close, like not normal, okay? So nothing was normal. Nobody really knew. I guess a couple people had heard rumors, but we were looking around the team meeting room. The trainers were standing on the side. The equipment managers were standing on one side. I couldn't even fathom what you were thinking. You're like, oh, they do team meetings different here.
Wow. I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, this is what is going on. And then all of a sudden, Jim Irsay walks in. A doctor, 2 doctors walk in. I think they even had their coats on. Like I believe it was like very obvious that they're doctors. And we were told the news. And whenever we were told that he went in, he checked in, that doctor for Chuck, he gave us an entire thing. He was like, as soon as he got there, literally an hour and a half later, he was in treatment. His wife had to bring a bunch of stuff. He wanted to come down. Jim told us the whole story. And the players obviously had a lot of questions, right? Like Reggie Wayne had known Chuck since high school. Chuck helped recruit him to the U, and obviously now he's back. Chuck and Reg were very tight. And nobody at that meeting told us, like, hey, he's going to beat this. The goal was to beat it and come back in the season, but it wasn't like they didn't give us a percentage. That's why I think Ron Rivera is saying this is very treatable and very curable. Like that message was not sent to the team whenever it was first delivered to us, and everybody was like, oh my God, did this guy. So then Bruce Arians obviously is told, like, hey, you're now our head coach here. And Bruce had to handle that thing masterfully, right? Chuck and he have been friends for a long time. Chuck just got a head coaching gig. So Bruce was like, hey, his office, we'll leave the light on for him in his office. I'm just here to manage things and get us to this. And Bruce Arians, since he's been around football for so long, was able to balance that. He had everybody's respect, and it was a very new organization, and everybody liked Chuck. We get a win. We take the game ball down to his hospital. I mean, it was like a incredible, riveting story, and Chuck was in it. I mean, Chuck was in battle there. And when he came back, that moment, there's a speech while he's still in treatment, I believe, at that point. He had a mask on. He took the mask off to give that speech after a game, after a win. I mean, it was an emotional season, I think, for everybody. And the real thing, it brought us together, right? And then when Chuck came back, it was like this masterful moment. And I've told the story about punt period was the first period back after he was gone for all these weeks and battling leukemia. And I thought maybe, like Chuck was going to come back and just be like, like, hey, listen, happy to be alive type thing. He started chewing me out like his first practice back. And I was like, yo, man, hey, what are we not? No, we got a game to win. I'm like, oh, you are all the way back. You're just right back in there. But it brought our team together, I think. And Darius, you were very new. That was a really, I don't want to say cool thing because it's never cool that happens. And Chuck obviously had the will and the grit to get through that. And he wanted to dance at his daughter's weddings, and he had all these goals. He wanted to lift a Lombardi. He wants to do all these things. And he got through it, but it was a real battle for him. But for our team, it was something like nobody else can experience what we're going through right now. It's literally only us.
Yeah.
And I would assume the Washington football team is going to have that same type of thing, pulling for Ron, but then also rallying for him as well.
Yeah, it definitely brought us a lot closer. My first start, actually, that's when a bunch of us went ball.
Oh, yeah.
Ball for the Chuck Strong thing. And I didn't know him well yet.
You got a pick 6 that night, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was in Jacksonville.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that. I do remember that.
Yeah, so it was definitely brought us together. And like you said, BA steered the ship. He led and he kept Chuck involved. He always was speaking about him. Chuck was always positive whenever he was talking to the team. I think, and for these guys, especially these coaches who've been coaching all their life, like, I'm sure that's probably why the doctors were like, hey, if you can keep doing it, do it. Because a lot of it is about, your attitude and your energy. If your energy levels are low or you're feeling, shitty, that can have an effect on your treatment, on your recovery. So I'm glad he's doing what he loves to do. But, obviously a little concerned with the pandemic that's going on. So, my well wishes to Ron, man.
They need him over there, too. Like, I don't think there's
– he's a GM, too, right? Still the acting GM?
So I would assume that's a couple roles that you have to fill there. But I don't know the lymph node cancer. We probably should have done a little bit more research on that and the expected time for coming back or whatever. Chuck had a real life, like, hey, 11 weeks, I think, was the goal or whatever. I don't know if it was 11 weeks, 10 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it was. But there was a real goal that was laid out to us on what he's expecting to do. And there was a couple weeks there where I guess it was very, very hard. Like, I got a chance to talk to Chuck about this whenever we traveled over to Japan for our USO tour. I mean, that's only like a 77-hour flight. I mean, it is. You're going, obviously, the other side of the world. And for those that are flat earthers, just go and book a flight to Japan or anywhere in Asia. You'll it's see. Pretty crazy, actually, just flying over the earth there. But I got.
So you saw the curve?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the horizon.
But by the way,
I believe it now.
By the way, if you buy into the flat Earth theory that hard, right, which I assume a lot of people do, you could also just assume that every airline is in on it. And when you're flying, they just kind of, the picture that you're seeing out the window is just a picture.
Concave mirror.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a reason for something. But getting a chance to talk to him, he was like, that was my goal. And he would watch film every single day. So he would get the iPad, the film sent over to him, and he'd be watching film. And there'd be days, I guess, where he would fall asleep in the middle of film and he would wake back up. He was like, but that type of thing kept him going.
Yep.
In the games, he said, on Sundays, it was the best days for him because he got a chance to watch the guys and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm happy Ron Rivera's going through it. Nothing but positive thoughts from this whole house and everybody we know. But I'm excited to see how the team rallies for him because it's going to be big for him, is his squad. And I think the boys will know that in the locker room.
You talked about how respected BA was and how big he was coming in for that. So, Jack Del Rio's on the staff, who's been a head coach before. That's huge for them, right?
That's very good
if he
news.
has to miss time.
And Del Rio, I think, is a player's coach, right? I believe Jack Del Rio is known as a player's coach.
Yeah, but didn't he have some comments a couple weeks ago?
Some questionable comments this offseason.
What was it about? The anthem? Well, it was something
It was about COVID, I think.
Was it? Whatever it was before he got back to the facility with his players too. So some guys will meet him for the first time, and that's all they know of him, really. And their Zoom meetings, maybe, but
so
it's a tough first impression.
I mean,
Who else is there?
brand new president, right? That's a big decision. He's going to have to figure out, okay, who do we put in there? Because it never made sense to me. Whenever you see these coaching titles, there's assistant head coach and this, and then it's this. There's all these titles, and that's all obviously for resumes and for your contracts and how much you're getting paid. I didn't really understand or respect those titles until the Chuck situation was okay, this is the guy now. You immediately know, okay, this is the guy. He's the guy who's going to be setting up the schedule. He's the guy who's going to be setting up the meals. He's the guy who's going to be setting up everything that we're running here. And by the way, BA was almost retired. People forget that before Chuck called him, he just got fired from the Steelers. He was in his car down to his lake house in Georgia, all packed up. And the story goes that Chuck called him and goes, hey, cuz, you want to, and he turned the car and drove straight to Indianapolis.
That was Chuck's first call, too.
Yeah.
His first hire.
Yeah, as soon as he got it was Bruce Arians. He was like, well, if I'm going to do this, we're going to do that guy. So I think that was obviously huge for our building. And for our team is knowing okay, we got a guy who's been there, done that. But for BA, he goes from retired to offensive coordinator for Andrew Luck to winning coach of the year alongside Chuck, basically. Then he gets a head coaching gig. That's a wild ride for him. And it was all because, and this sounds so stupid, but it really is the next man up mantra almost. Which is what the NFL is. And I would assume in Washington, they're going to have to make that decision. That's a big time decision.